Hey guys. So this is like my fourth attempt at trying to record the beginning of this video, and I've had to do it over. Okay, so I'm trying to just get this done. Before we get into the orphan trains, because this is why I'm making the video, it's about the orphan trains. I need to talk about the last 3 videos I made, the 3 parts on one type of tear, the androgyne, where I showed you guys the MTFs, the males to females, and the FTMs, the females to males. The whole point of why I did that was so that you could take that information, all those markers that I showed, that were showed, to us on Telegram, and to use those in your lives. Not just when you're identifying people on the computer screen or the TV screen, but identifying people in your daily life. Because what I didn't say in those videos is that those inverts, those hidden inverts, those tears, are not just on the TV screen. They're everywhere. They're all around us. And this is what many of us are finding online. When we go into our communities and see for ourselves and use those markers I showed you and transvestigate for ourselves. And this is what we're finding. Our bosses, our coworkers, our people from our past, friends from our past, people at the grocery store, and not everybody at the grocery store, but some are inverts when you walk in a grocery store. People that work in government offices, city council members, state government officials, police departments, fire departments, doctors, lawyers, nurses. I mean, it goes on and on. It's everywhere, in every capacity. And that's the real truth that no one on YouTube or any other platform is talking about. That's the whole truth. Sure, people transvestigate. That's how I found out about it. But they're only transvestigating celebrities, royalty, politicians, etc., like I did. They're not talking about this. And I think everybody that's watched those videos should do it so that we can see how widespread they are, because this is what they don't want us to do, is to focus on the ones in our past, in our communities now where we live today, etc. They don't want us to do it. I was watching a show a year ago, and it was a documentary of a crime, some true crime, okay? And it was in a small town of 100 people. And the people in the video were trannies. Their children were trannies. And I even went back to the grandmother from the early 1900s. I found photographs of her. Obvious MTF. This is a small town, like in Kansas or somewhere. I'm telling you, they're everywhere. And this is what's going to bring us into talking about the orphan trains, because it's related. Another thing I want to talk about is, I didn't mention this, and I want to mention this now. Most of YouTube and other social media platforms are hidden inverts. Not only are they controlled opposition, which we've talked about many times in the comment section of my videos, if you guys want to read some of them. But what I can't say and I can't talk about on here is who these content creators are that are the inverts. That's why, another reason why I showed you guys these videos and had you look at these markers so you can identify them and transvestigate them for yourself. So that you could see for yourself when you're watching YouTube or any other platform, the first thing you should be doing before you even start listening is take screenshots and see if they are truly hidden inverts. And then go see if they have a website and see if they have pictures on their website. See if they have full body pictures. See if they're on Facebook. See if they're on Twitter. See where else you can find their photos. Because this is what I did. I investigated everyone in the Little Season community on YouTube. And like I said, I can't tell you who they are. But the least you could do is do what I'm telling you to do and find out for yourself who you're really listening to. That's what you should be doing. That's what I believe God wants us all to do. We're supposed to be testing all spirits. We're not just supposed to be listening without really examining who this person is. And now that I've showed you the markers, you can take the screenshots, go find them in other places, try to get a full body shot so you can really examine them, their full body, and you'll see. Their pictures are out there. You'll see. Most of them, most of the big channel, Little Season content creators are hidden inverts. A lot of us already know this. And it's not just the Little Season. It's in every single subject matter on YouTube. You watch a video on how to make a cake. You watch a video on how to plant seeds in your garden, on how to fix a car. Not everybody's an invert, but a lot of them are. You'll see. And what's the purpose of it? So that we get so conditioned subconsciously to be looking at them thinking that this is what real women should look like and this is what real men should look like. It's conditioning. It's what they've been doing to us since we were babies, except in other areas. It's brainwashing. So that we think this is what real women and men should look like. Same with why they're in all our communities. They were planted here purposely in each one of our communities so that we would think this is what we should look like. When I made those videos, you know how long it took me to find an actual man and an actual woman online to show you pictures of? Try it. Do a Google search. When you Google search a man or a woman, you're going to get trannies. Because they don't want you to know what real men and real women look like. The tares are everywhere, people. So now I'm going to get into the orphan trains and how this is all related. Okay, so here we go. We're going to talk about the orphan trains. And I was reminded today, somebody commented in one of my older videos, the title was New Content. And I was saying at the time that I was going to go in a different direction with my content because I was focusing on the fake Hebrew and other videos like it. And having realized back then that more and more that we were in the Little Season and looking at all the proof physically in our world that were in the little season, like the orphan trains and the old world buildings and the melted buildings and the mud floods and all that people talk about. That's what I was going to make my videos continuing forward on. And I was really excited about it. I looked at the publishing date of that video called New Content. It was published October 20th of 2024. That's almost 2 years ago. And as you can see, all my content going forward has not been on any of that. So it's just one example of how you think that you're going to go in this one direction and then the Lord takes you in this totally different direction. Because if I hadn't done all the research I have done in the past 2 years and all the content I've showed you in those 2 years, almost 2 years, then I would have a whole different take on the physical proof that we're in the little season. It would be more in line with the mainstream YouTube channels. Okay? Well, by having those almost 2 years and doing my research, it has led me to a totally different viewpoint you're not going to hear about the little season, physical proof, etc. of the season we're in all around us. It's totally different. And you're going to see, we're going to talk about the orphan trains. Then I have another video about the old world buildings. A couple big surprises. But for right now, we're focusing on the orphan trains. So I am not going to do a deep dive into the orphan trains. If you want to do that, you can watch other content creators' channels. This is specifically to get into why I made this video, but I will touch a little bit on the orphan trains. Okay. So for those of you that are new to all this and the little season, I did not know, and many of us did not know, that part of our history included these orphan trains. They were a mass relocation program in the United States that operated from 1854 all the way to 1929. So that's almost 100 years. And I think it's not a coincidence that none of us have heard about this until people started posting videos on it on YouTube several years ago. So the system transported, okay, so these are the numbers, anywhere from 200,000 all the way up to, I've heard 300,000 orphans in the United States. Orphans did not necessarily mean that they were orphans in the definition that we know, meaning no parents. The parents are deceased or missing or something like that. Okay, apparently they were transported even when they knew the parents were alive. We'll get into that a little bit. And by the 1850s, large eastern cities faced massive waves of immigration and poverty as the immigrants, from the old country were coming in. Tens of thousands of children lived on the streets of New York City, surviving by begging or petty crime. We're going to get into that in a little bit, show you a picture. Many children found loving, supportive homes, grew up to become successful community members. And I can vouch for that because I've watched several videos. You can watch videos on the actual orphan train riders. Most of all of them have passed away, but they're videos they put on YouTube where they actually talk about their experience. And some are good, some are bad. Why were they bad? Because the real reason they transported, there's multi-layers of reasons. One of the reasons they had such bad experiences is because if you research into this, they were placed on these trains. They were told to forget their past. They were told to forget their parents. They were given new names, new identities. Basically, their memories were wiped clean, and they were used as slave labor. And a lot of them didn't sleep in the house with their families, their adoptive families. They slept outside or in the barn or, just terrible situations. They were abused. They were neglected. I'm sure they were even sexually abused. And they were treated as property. They were treated like slaves. They were not treated as children of God, as human beings. And, you know, this is some of their stories. This isn't something that just happened in the United States. It also happened in Europe, in England, in Canada. There was over 100,000 children that were placed on rural farms in Canada. Happened in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, pretty much everywhere. It was a global relocation program. Okay? And this happened after what a lot of us believe was the Great Reset. So what I really want to get into is who was behind it. And that is a man named Charles Loring Brace. He was a minister. He founded the Children's Aid Society, which basically became the forerunner for the foster care system. He founded it in New York City to address the crisis of all these quote-unquote homeless and destitute children living on the streets. Okay? So he thought, okay, great, let's relocate them to these rural Midwestern towns. They can live on these farms and basically, you know, be adopted into these quote-unquote loving homes. But, you know, that was far from it. It was slave labor. Another thing I found, which I can't find right now, I think it was a video I watched, it showed proof that a lot of, when they would go into these orphan trains, go through these towns, they would go to community centers or churches, but a lot of them went to Freemason lodges. Okay? So the Freemasons were involved because by this time, there were Freemason lodges all across the country. Every small town and in every city, as I mentioned in another one of my videos. Made sure that happened. Okay? Got to control the flow of information. Got to have the Freemasons all set up to carry out their orders, right? Because as I mentioned in my other videos, they're all Kabbalists. When you hit that 4th degree. Charles Loring Brace. I researched a little bit into him, and here is a picture of him with his classmates at, of all places, Yale University. And what do we know, or maybe some of you don't, about Yale University? Well, that's where all the billionaires, all the powers that be, all the elites, or not all, but a lot of them send their children to. George Bush went there. George Bush Jr. went there. A lot of politicians, people in power send their kids there. And coincidentally, at Yale University is where they have the Skull and Bones Society. Yeah. And I showed you in one of my previous videos how the skull and bones have a male side of the skull and a female side of the skull, as you can see here, and a male femur and a female femur, as you can see here, because they're telling us, it's part of what they have to do apparently, disclose the truth, but in a hidden way, who they really are, inverts. So I thought, let's check out this photo of Charles and his classmates. And I did. And voila, as you can see, I put the female skull on, it fits. The male skull does not fit. And if you look at the rest of these classmates here, you can see a lot of them have female skulls. The eyes are close together, the nose, the mouth is close together. They got that squishy face. They got the flat foreheads because these are the elite's children. And I already explained. They're all inverted. So I'm like, wow, what a shocker. So Charles Loring Brace, a minister, is a tranny. So I said, okay, let's see if anybody else in his family is a tranny. Well, I couldn't find any pictures of his wife, or I should say its wife. So I found a picture of its son, Charles Loring Brace Jr. And here we have a picture. The female skull fits. As you can see, the male skull does not fit. Then I looked more into Charles Loring Brace and who he associated with, one being Charles Darwin. What a shocker. Who's also a tranny. His father, John Pierce Brace, was an instructor to Harriet Beecher Stowe. The one who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin was an abolitionist. I find it quite ironic that Charles is associated with these people, especially Harriet Stowe, who's pushing anti-slavery, while at the same time, Charles is pushing child labor and slavery. Total contradiction. And Harriet is also a tranny. No surprise. Because all the trannies flock together. They're all in the same social circles. And then we have more trannies. Here's a picture of the orphans with these two MTFs on the far right. And it's clear you can see their MTFs. Look at the shoulder width. Can fit 3 heads on the one that's not the far right, but next to the other one. And they're the agents. They're called agents. And they worked for Charles Loring Brace for the Children's Aid Society. So once I looked at all of these people and how they're all inverts, then I started wondering, okay, are some of these orphans inverts? And I went back to some of the videos I had watched, which showed them elderly, and they didn't look inverted. So then I looked through some other pictures, which I'm going to show in a second, of some of the orphans, and they were inverts. And before I do that, I wanted to show this picture here. So if you look at the boy on the far right, and it might be hard to see, but he doesn't look like he's really sleeping. He looks like he's just posing for the camera. In fact, they all do. But I'll start with the boy on the far right. Because his forehead's crinkled up. Like he's just posing. Because when you're really asleep, your body relaxes. Your forehead, everything. So he definitely looks like he's pretending he's asleep. Like a kid would when the parents tell him to go to sleep. And he's pretending he's asleep, but he's not. And then the one in the middle is funny because that's a total fake pose. Now, who sleeps like that? And then the one on the far left is totally smirking if you look up close. And if you need to, you can Google search this. I found it. If you look under Charles Loring Brace Orphans, you'll find this picture. So you can blow it up. And he's smirking. The one on the far left. So you can tell it's entirely staged. Just like a lot of photos from the past are, like Civil War photos. It's totally staged. Check those out. I mean, and then you start questioning our history and what is the truth about our history and what isn't. And when I see photos like this, that's what I question. Was this truly legit? Were there truly thousands and millions of homeless, quote unquote, homeless and destitute orphans in New York City and all of these other big cities? And in fact, in Canada, and as I mentioned, Europe, all these places, And the more I researched into it, the more I realized it was a fabrication. I'm pretty sure. Because as you're going to see, not only were the agents and the founder of the Children's Aid Society and others that were associated with them, but there were inverts on the trains. Not all of them, but there were inverts. I found them. So there's another agenda going on here. And it makes you have to question everything. Okay, so this first photo here, the woman was an orphan train rider. And that's, quote unquote, her husband. But as you can see, I put the Scullies on. And she's a male, an MTF, and he is an FTM. And I put the other skulls on, the female skull on her and the male skull on him. They don't fit. Okay. So there's one orphan train rider, tranny. Here's the next orphan train riders. The FTM on the left and the MTF on the right. And the scullies, as you can see, are on them, and they are inverts. Here is the next photo. These are the adoptive parents who happen to be inverted, and the orphan train rider is the baby in the middle. His name's Howard. Okay? So then I found a picture of Howard with his brother, which is right here, when Howard's older and his brother's older. And you can see they're FTMs. I mean, I showed you guys what to look for, the markers for FTMs, and they have all the markers. Short torso, akimbo arms, the head, the skull. It's a female skull. So there's another orphan train rider with inverted adoptive parents. You have to put them with the inverted adoptive parents, right? Because they go together. And then I found some random photos here. The first one is actually off of a Telegram channel. I took it from there, one of the transvest Telegram channels. Somebody posted this. And these aren't orphan train riders. These are just people from the past. If you want to look into this, the person who posted these put the scullies on, and they're inverts. And then this next picture here is also from a transvest group. And these aren't orphan train riders. These are just inverts from the past. So then you sit there and go, okay, hold on a second here. So there's a deeper agenda into these orphan trains. But nobody's talking about this. And it explains a lot. It explains how, a lot of these orphan train riders, not all of them were inverts, okay? Because we're talking about mixing them up in the population. So it makes sense. They were mixed into the population. They were dispersed all across the world after the Great Reset. And this is how we get, I don't know if all are inverts, but this is how we get some of them in our communities. It makes sense to me. And this reminds me of the parable of the wheat and tares that I've spoken of before, where the farmer is sowing wheat in his field and it's growing, and then the people fall asleep and the enemy comes in and plants tares or weeds that grow up among the wheat. And it's hard to distinguish one from the other. It's just like that. Except this enemy is in the form of an invert and his gang, which I'm sure were ordered by the real enemy to plant these tares all over the world. And again, as I've said, they're indistinguishable unless you know the markers to look for. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about other types of tares. As I've already talked about, there's the hidden inverts, and most of you probably already know some of these other ones. There are the devil's children that are walking around. Jesus talked about them, the Pharisees, but there's modern day Pharisees. There's modern day people that are the seed of the devil, because it talks about that in Genesis, where God says, I will put enmity between your seed and his seed, meaning Eve's seed and the devil's seed. So it's obvious he had offspring, and Jesus talked about them. And it wasn't just spiritual. It wasn't a spiritual connotation. It was physical. So there's those. And I think a lot of what make up the tares, besides the inverts, are narcissists. They're not necessarily inverts, but they are narcissists. Most of the people in my life and in my husband's life and some other people I know or getting to know online, their family members, friends, etc. were all narcissists. My adoptive parents are narcissists. My birth parents are narcissists. They completely lack empathy. They are completely self-centered and self-absorbed. And I believe it's to the point where, they're for sure heartless, or their hearts are very cold. And they for sure have no souls. I just don't believe they do because of the way they act and the way they respond. It's like they're mimicking human behavior, but they're incapable of it. All they do is mimic what they see. They observe and they mimic it. And I believe they're all demon possessed because they're empty vessels. And if you're not filled with the Holy Spirit, then what are you filled with? You're subject to be filled with a demon. And I believe a lot of them are. And I've had experiences I've talked about in my videos with my gang stalking experiences and targeting experiences, which is spiritual warfare. But I've talked about them, and at the time I didn't know that. And I was talking to demons. Demons were talking through people. I didn't know it, but now I do. And I still get that today from others. But I recognize it now. Okay, so there's those people. And of course, all these terrors are subject to demon possession as well. They're filled with demons. And they can speak through them, whether they're aware of it or not, and speak to us. So it's a matter of discerning that and being aware of that and knowing when you're really speaking to the person or the actual demon. Or maybe there really is no person, because they don't even really seem to have a personality other than what they mirror back to you. I'm just looking at my list. Okay, and then there's the bots and the NPCs, non-player characters, that are very robotic. I think they're just demons manifesting in the flesh. And then they just appear and can disappear, although I've never seen it. Excuse me. I've heard people talk about it. I've had personal experiences with NPCs. I didn't realize it at the time that's what they were, but now looking back, that's what they were. But I'm not going to share them right now. I'm going to share them on a later date. But they were definitely robotic. When you look at them, they look like robots, like AI covered with skin. And you can see it. There's like a total blank look in their eyes. There's nothing there. And even their emotions, and it's just a sense you get that they're not real. They're not really human. I can't explain it. It's just a sense I got when I saw them briefly. But they're all around us. You know, I watched a video on someone talking about NPCs. Of course, it was AI generated, the response. But I thought there was a lot of things that I agree with, meaning that they aren't able to hold a conversation if it's too deep. They get a blank look over their eyes. They kind of glaze over. They change the subject. They get uncomfortable. They start laughing uncomfortably. They just mirror what you're saying in a deep type of response that you're asking a question to. They're not capable of anything deep or soulful of a response because they have no soul. They're non-player characters. They're just planted here by the enemy just to do whatever. And it usually involves spiritual warfare. At least, you know, from a believer's perspective. And then the last one are fallen angels that are here in the flesh, that take the form of humans. You know, in the Bible, it talks about Genesis 6, where the fallen angels mated with human women. And in order to do that, they had to take, obviously, human male form to do that. And then, of course, they had the Nephilim, the offspring, which were the giants of old. And so there's obviously the Nephilim, I believe, that are here. And I don't really want to talk too much about that, because some people say, oh, well, they're not giants anymore. They're our human size. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to talk about it. But anyway, the fallen angels. I did a Bible study on that, and I'm going to share it with you right now after I finish here about what I found out about the fallen angels, them being here right now, and kind of a number of how many of them are here. Because in the Bible, it talks about them, angels appearing in human form. So we know they have the ability to do that. And I think that's about it. Okay, so we're in Revelation 12. And it's the women and the dragon. And in verse 3, it says, and another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. So this is Satan. His tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and cast them to earth. And stars frequently mean in the Bible angels. You can look it up. Okay? Stars mean angels. So 1/3 of these angels from heaven, including Satan, was cast down to earth. Okay, and if you believe we're in the little season, you believe all of this already happened, like myself. So if you go down to verse 9, Satan thrown down to earth, and the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. So that's where we're at. Satan has been thrown down to earth. He obviously has been loosed, if you believe we're in the little season. And his angels, 1/3 of them, are here right now. So then I wanted to know, well, what number are we talking about? Is there any kind of numbers that talks about the angels? And so I went to Revelation 5. And this is the scroll on the Lamb. And if you go down to verse 11, it says, then I looked, this is John saying this, and I heard around the throne and the living creatures and the elders the voice of many angels, numbering myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands. So I'm like, okay, so can we get an idea of that numbering? So the New Testament was written in Greek. And if you go to look up the Greek myriads, 1 myriad is 10,000. So myriads of myriads means 10,000 times 10,000. So that would be 100 million. And if you look up the Greek word 1,000, and it says thousands of thousands, it means 1,000 times 1,000. So that would be 1 million. So it doesn't literally mean 100. If you add them both together, 101 million. It's just giving you an idea. It's an innumerable number. It's a vast number. That's what they're trying to communicate as they're writing this. So let's just go literally by the number to get an idea, even though we know it's probably even more than 101 million, or it's not exactly 101 million, right? And these were the angels that were gathered around the throne, because it says right here. Then I looked and I heard around the throne. So I'm thinking, okay, there's more to heaven than just the throne. So that means these are the angels around the throne. Well, what about all the rest of them? So now I'm thinking we've got to multiply that 101 million idea of a number by all the rest of the angels in heaven. And if heaven is huge and vast, which I'm sure it is, I just decided on the number 10. So I multiplied 101 million that are around the throne times 10. And that comes out to a little over 1 billion. And to me, it's probably more than that, but that sounds about right for the number of angels in the entire vastness of heaven. Okay. So what's 1/3 of that? Because it says Satan's tail struck the angels in heaven, and a third of them were cast down of the angels in heaven. So what's 1/3 of roughly 1 billion? It comes out to over 300 million fallen angels here on earth right now. And that number sounds pretty accurate, considering the number we know we have in heaven, right? We have an idea. So, and it's probably even more than over 300 million. It's probably even higher. But that sounds about right. So right now, some of these tares walking around that you think are human are actually fallen angels in the flesh, along with all the other tares that I've described to you, plus the inverts, obviously. So that's quite a lot of different types of tares, considering there's just us wheat here, us real men and real women that are real children of God. And on that note, my next video coming soon is going to be about who I believe the camp of the saints really are and where they're located.